The Iran Action Group is a special task force and part of the U.S. agenda to maximize economic and political pressure on Iran. That is the official explanation given of the group's function. Now, the premise here is that Iran is the bad guy, so to speak. But how can that be when it is the U.S. that is involved in wars in countries such as Syria, Yemen, and Afghanistan? Which country, along with some of its allies, is causing instability?
This is Brian Hook, an old hand in the U.S. State Department. He is said to be one of the most influential officials behind the scenes of U.S. foreign policy. The hawkish diplomat is one of the supporters of America's sanctions policy. He is expected to resign as head of policy planning, one of the most important posts at the Department of State. He now has a new assignment: to work full-time to find ways to mount economic and political pressure on Iran. The U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has appointed him as head of a newly formed body dubbed Iran Action Group.
I'm happy to announce the creation of the Iran Action Group. The Iran Action Group will be responsible for directing, reviewing, and coordinating all aspects of the State Department's Iran-related activity, and it will report directly to me.
His appointment adds to a list of warmongering U.S. politicians who are part of this U.S. administration, hawks like the U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton. Hook has over the past months been actively engaged in efforts to try to persuade U.S. allies to join America's campaign against Iran. He has visited European and Asian countries in recent months as part of a mission that could further destabilize the Middle East.
The actions of successive American governments have created a tremendous amount of instability in the Middle East. Nonetheless, the Americans are totally indifferent to this. The Americans care nothing that hundreds of thousands of Iraqis, of Syrians, of Yemenis are dying because of their policies. All that matters to the Americans is that their grip on the Middle East remains firm.
Now, the overall goal of this group, to change Iran's behavior. One example, as the group states, for Iran to end its support for militant groups. One of the problems behind this group is that it cannot be taken seriously. The U.S. itself and its allies have been, for example, supporting terrorist groups throughout the years, something that Iran has not. Now, the group faces another challenge, too. How does it want to convince some of the U.S. allies to cooperate with it? As it stands, many of the U.S. allies are involved in trade disputes with Washington, and some are actually under U.S. sanctions. Already, China and the EU have refused to stop the purchase of Iranian oil, but all of this extra work could have been prevented if the U.S. had done one thing: stay in the Iran nuclear deal.
The U.S. diplomat has been pushing European and Asian states to support anti-Iran sanctions and to eventually cut off Iran's oil exports. Iran has issued serious warnings against any such scenario. The establishment of the new action group against Iran has further exposed the depth of hostility of U.S. President Donald Trump's administration towards Iran.
When it comes to Iran, I believe that the Americans look at Iran and think to themselves, if we can destroy the Islamic Revolution, if we can install a pro-Western government in Tehran, then American dominance of the Middle East will be indefinite.
The U.S. president unilaterally withdrew from an international nuclear deal with Iran in May and is now reimposing sanctions against it. Even some of the closest allies of the U.S. insist that they will not abide by the new U.S. sanctions. The unveiling of the new anti-Iran action group comes as Iranians are marking the anniversary of the 1953 CIA-led coup against the democratically elected government of Iran. The coup overthrew Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh and strengthened the U.S.-backed monarch at the time. America's hostility towards Iran has a long history, and its latest measures strongly suggest that there's been no major shift in its Iran policy.